feels like we should have a cage fight right in the middle, doesn't it?
Let's go.
I paid for that.
Where are we going?
I don't know.
Help.
If you guys don't know about the junior high room, then you might not know we have a cell phone bucket.
Wait, this is
Before we start any sort of event, we take all the phones, all the tablets. Whoa, careful there, bud.
That includes high schoolers tonight and the next 3 Fridays.
So,
In this room, please.
take your phones, your smartwatches, your tablets, gently drop them in the bucket. So as not to drive holes in anybody else's devices.
Don't turn it in and it goes off.
Disgust, he drops it, man. It hurts so.
Answer it.
I found it.
We're all
I lost it again.
How many devices are you putting? Oh, he's holding? Don't do it. Don't do it. Anybody else? We always prefer the wrong silence. Unless, of course, you have the kind of mom or grandma that likes to call you in service. In which case, we love it when you leave your ringtone up. In which case, we will answer that for you.
No, you won't.
Oh, but we will.
Oh, but hey, I got a very obnoxious ringtone.
That's great. I'll answer it faster. Oh, you already did yours. That's right. You were the one who threw it. Alrighty. If you guys leave that till the end of service, well, I'm so stuck in saying that because it's usually what I do is a church service of some kind. If you leave it till the end of tonight, then we'll slowly, gently tip them out of the bucket, and the last one to hit the floor can have a free $1 item from our snack bar. You know, if you haven't had enough sugar tonight. Yeah. Go. Do it now. But it's buried. Yeah. So tonight, Dinos, Dragons, and Donuts. Thank you, high schoolers, for joining us up here. It's fantastic. We even have a few adults in attendance that, well, that's cool. I'm glad. What we're going to be doing over this 4-week study is looking at some evidence, looking at the Bible, and trying to figure out if there is a way to understand dinosaurs that matches up those two. So we're going to pass these out. These will be our little handouts. You can follow this during the video we're going to watch, or you can just hang on to it for later. What we're going to do is we're actually going to go through the front side together at the end of the video, but the back side is purely just if you like to geek out about dinosaurs. So the backside is going to have Latin words. The backside is going to have paleontological terms. The backside is if you really dig dinosaurs. If you don't, that's okay. Stick to the front. It's all good stuff. Yes, a question. Oh, please ask other questions if you have other questions. Definitely ask other questions. But know that since this is a 4-week study, that you may ask a question where the best answer I can give is please wait 2 weeks. And then there'll be like an entire segment of video about that. That might happen, okay? So just be ready for that. I apologize. I don't want to spoil too much before it's time.
We have fun in high school.
We lost Justin, but we gained like twice the clownage. It's glorious. All right, so yeah, that's how we're gonna do most of these nights. We'll come, we'll hang out, we'll eat donuts, we'll start our video up. Video's like 20 minutes. And then we will get to have conversation after that where you guys can ask questions. We can go through the different pointer questions on the sheet. We're also going to be doing something different on weeks 2, 3, and 4 than tonight. Weeks 2, 3, and 4, before the video starts, we're actually going to start with a Kahoot. Does anyone here know what a Kahoot is? So weeks 2, 3, and 4, it'll be different. We'll start the evening. You'll keep your phones. And then after the Kahoot, you'll put them in the bucket. Does that make sense for you who know what the heck a Kahoot is? Kahoot, if you don't know, it's kind of like a flash mob game show where you just all sign up with your phones and play on the fly, and we'll have a different prize for week 2, week 3, and week 4. Yeah?
What if we have parental controls on our phones?
Then you should bring your parental controlling unit, and they can undo it for you as the game progresses. No, the other side effect of this is that you guys have to form teams because there isn't an equal number of phones in here to people. And so you will have to, at some point, because not all of you have phones, gather up around one of your friends that does have a phone, that does have data. We don't have public Wi-Fi. So if your device is Wi-Fi only, it's useless. You don't get to use that. So grab someone who has a phone, you guys can play the game together, and then you all win the prize and share it. All right, that'll be like next week and afterwards. Yeah.
Well, I know I have unlimited data, so
Cool.
we could just do a hotspot.
Dude, if you want to do that, go for it. I'm not going to claim that your parents are cool with it or that your unlimited data is as unlimited as you think.
It is.
But cool.
You might get some serious
Oh. I know, like unlimited until you hit 22 gigabytes. That doesn't mean unlimited.
Unlimited
32? Okay.
It starts unraveling after that. You still get
Unlimited data pay for every minute.
Yeah, I don't like that. All right, so without further ado, so we have plenty of time for discussion later. We're going to kick straight into the video now.
Who's that first?
We know dinosaurs existed, and we learn more about them every day. What were they like? How can we learn even more? It's like piecing together a puzzle when you don't know what the final picture will be. You know, for centuries, people on every continent have found fossilized remains, but have had no idea what the bones were. The first person to understand that these creatures were different than any other was Sir Richard Owen, a 19th century comparative anatomist and reptile expert. In 1841, he named them Dinosauria, or terribly great reptiles. But did they really live 65 million years ago, as we've been told? If you're a Christian, then the timeline is important. If the dinosaurs went extinct before humans existed, then what does that mean about death after Adam's sin? And if the dinosaurs lived in the time of humans, were they on Noah's Ark? Did they too die in a global flood? Does the existence of dinosaurs contradict the Bible? I'm Marcus Lloyd, and in this series we're going to look for the answers to those questions and more. So, let's get started. Let's start digging into dinosaurs. Once, we shared our world with strange creatures, whole kinds of animals that vanished not so long ago, leaving only traces behind. What happened to them? Did they slowly go extinct? Or was it something sudden, something global and cataclysmic? Can science answer these questions? Can the Bible unravel this mystery? In this series, we'll look to both science and the Bible to help bring dinosaurs back to life, to find some answers to the many questions they have left us. Uncovering the truth about dinosaurs. Digging into dinosaurs. Scientists at the excavation site we're heading toward use the most modern equipment and technology to unlock the mysteries buried in these hills. So far, there have been about 60 kinds of dinosaurs found throughout the world. Between the 1870s and 1890s, rivalries between scientists fueled a great dinosaur rush. While those years brought many advancements in the study of dinosaurs, the most amazing discoveries actually happened in the last few decades, in places like this. Wow, this is amazing. Here, scientists are listening to the stories these bones have to tell.
Paleontologists see the layers of rock on the earth kind of like pages in a book. Sort of picture a book on its front cover, laying there with the pages horizontally, with the first page being at the bottom, and the subsequent pages all the way to the end of the book piled up on top of it. And that picture each page as a layer of rock. Expand that up to half a mile total thickness to a mile, in some cases even thicker than that. So what you're looking at are layers of rock that correspond to pages in a book. Read each page, starting at the bottom, moving to the top. You're reading through time, reading about the history of the earth through time. Unlike books, not all the pages in this book of the earth are there. Some of them have washed away. Some of them have been destroyed in some way or another, or they're fragmentary. As a paleontologist, when I see a fossil, I don't see evidence of death, I see evidence of life. But my second response to it is, so how did it get this way? How did it get to where it's not alive? So as a paleontologist, my second job, in a sense, is to sort of be a forensic pathologist, like a person who's at a crime scene trying to figure out what happened. If we go back a century and a half or so, we had what we call the Bone Wars. They just discovered dinosaurs for the first time. It's like, whoa, these are cool. And so they dig them up out of the ground, and they'd haul these bones to various places. And you know what? They lost the crime scene. They destroyed the crime scenes. They put the bones together that were broken, and then they assembled these beautiful skeletons. But they lost most of the forensic evidence as to what happened, how they got to where they were. So what I'm interested in is actually looking at these bones to figure out how they came to be this way. The fact that we have so many of these things, too, suggests that there's probably a lot of burial going on very quickly, but not like the present. Something unusual is going on. Now, if we kind of pan back a little bit, not just one bone, we find them in great masses. Now the story becomes even more interesting because we haven't just found an individual body. We found hundreds of bodies. We're going to want to know what in the world happened. And that's what we got with the dinosaurs.
It's like we only have fragments of the pages in our book. For all we know, entire chapters could be missing. We have to track down every possible source to reconstruct this history. Let's begin by taking a closer look at the dinosaurs themselves, starting with one of the world's most famous.
Tyrannosaurus rex sioux, as it's known, was one of the largest T-Rexes ever discovered in South Dakota. And it's actually now residing in the Field Museum in Chicago. What's spectacular about it is not only is it one of the largest and possibly one of the oldest T-Rexes ever discovered, but it's very complete. About 90% of the skeleton is actually real.
Also, Sioux, with its large head, huge skull, showed some design features that indicate to us it would have been a good predator, probably.
Tyrannosaurus rexes in general had very good vision, it appears. They actually had stereoscopic vision. You look at the skeleton and you look straight on, its eyes could look right at you. They had very good vision. A lot of dinosaurs could only see to the side, but T-Rex could look directly at you, right over the top of its nose. And speaking of the nose had a very large olfactory lobe in the brain, so the nose was probably very, very good. Almost like a shark in the water, a T-Rex could smell things probably miles away.
Scientists estimate that Sioux was about the size of a large African elephant, 5 to 7 tons. How does a creature that big end up as a fossil? There's only one way. She had to be buried in layers of sediment before scavengers got her or she decayed. Here's another dinosaur who met a mysterious end.
There's a spectacular Allosaurus specimen called Ebenezer, and it actually is about a 30-foot long Allosaurus. So Allosaurs were pretty big too. And this specimen is about 50% complete. And what's wonderful about this specimen is it has almost a complete skull. It has all of its teeth, all 53 teeth are in the skull.
When he was unearthed, his head and neck were separated from the body. There were no bite marks to suggest that a scavenger had torn him apart. Some catastrophic force did this to him.
Ebenezer's head was actually torn loose from its body and transported some distance from its body. Just the type of thing you'd expect in a global flood, where these animals are buried rapidly, torn apart limb from limb, and just laid out there for us to find after the flood today.
It wasn't just one Allosaurus that was found this way. Powerful forces buried dinosaurs like Sioux and Ebenezer in massive fossil beds where thousands of other dinosaurs died. How did it happen? Well, that's a critical question for all Christians. Were the dinosaurs wiped out by the flood as the Bible described? We're going to put all the clues together that we can, gaining evidence and analyzing it until we find our answer.
Eddie is an Edmontosaurus that's on display at the Institute for Creation and Research's offices in Dallas, Texas. And it's spectacular because it's a juvenile. The small dinosaurs are rare to find. You don't really find too many juvenile dinosaurs. And this one seems to be something that were 3 or 4 years old. Only weighed about 400 or so pounds. It was a nice juvenile-sized dinosaur. Would have been just before its growth spurt. The ornithopods in general were herbivores. They ate exclusively plants, we believe, and they grazed in huge herds.
Eddie's remains were found among swamp animals, ducks, frogs, lizards, turtles. Creatures that weren't supposed to be alive at that time, according to secular science. But how did they all end up together? There's another young ornithopod, Leonardo, a Brachiolephosaurus found in Montana, whose remains raise more questions.
We think of mummies as purposefully preserved, like an Egyptian mummy, where people actually mummified the remains of their dead. But there are natural mummies, like, for example, people who got stuck in bogs in England. But Leonardo, as a Brachiolephosaurus dinosaur, was mummified in sand, which is weird. So it's a mystery. How do you get a dinosaur locked into sand, and then how do you get it so well preserved that you can see the stomach contents, you can see where the muscles attached?
Everything's so well preserved in this dinosaur. It had to have been buried very, very rapidly. You only get that type of preservation when you bury something catastrophically in something like a global flood. Well, what was extra special about Leonardo was it also had its stomach contents. Its last meal was still inside of its stomach. And they could see that it ate ferns, it ate magnolias, and it ate conifers.
A dinosaur with skin? Magnolias in the stomach? These are the type of discoveries that bring us closer to the answers we're looking for.
One of the other major dinosaur groups is the Thyreophora, which means the shield bearers. Not only do we have the stegosaurs and the ankylosaurs, those general categories, but we have lots of varieties in between. There's different types of stegosaurs, all sorts of varieties of different ways the back was covered. When God designed these animals, he designed these animals with a tremendous amount of variety in them. They weren't changing kinds, but there were lots of variety within that kind.
The Stegosaurus, of course, is noted for its plated characteristics, having the plates going along the back. And yet, interestingly enough, we've never found any fossils of Stegosaurus that look like that. We have found the plates lying around the fossilized remains of the creature. And evolutionists, paleontologists can only guess that that is how the plates were associated with the dinosaur. Some say the plates are for heat regulation, others say it might be some kind of display or perhaps even in terms of defense. The fact is that we're not sure, except it's one more unique created kind of creature.
And then there were the gentle giants, the great sauropods. These were some of the longest and heaviest of all dinosaurs. At one time, ancient swamps would have been full of them. We know this from the vast number of swamp-like plant and animal fossils found around the world.
Of all the sauropods, Brachiosaurus is probably one of the most unusual. When God designed the Brachiosaurus, he made it different than all other sauropodomorphs. He actually had the front legs longer than the back legs. Every other dinosaur, Apatosaurus, Diplodocus, all the other sauropods, the long necks, all of them have shorter front legs and longer back legs. But the Brachiosaurus was built to stand with its head sticking way up into the air. And we see that in some of the Jurassic Park movies.
All that is able to be done because of these beautiful design structures that allow flexibility along with some rigidity to it, that allow lightening of the skeletal structure so that it's not as heavy as you might think, and is all supported by giant columns and pillars. This is a beautiful design that when you look at all the pieces, they work together. And they work together not just for one animal, but for all the wide variety of the different sauropods. They all have slightly different variations on the same design cues.
One of the unique kinds of ceratopsian creatures are the Triceratops. And even Triceratops come in a variety of forms and a variety of shapes and sizes.
Now, all the different species within the Ceratopsia that we know of all have frills. They have these extensions of the bones of their skull that go backwards over the neck. Now, the Triceratops is unusual because it's a solid sheet of bone that goes from the back of the skull all the way to the end of the frill, and then there's these neat little knobs and bony small spikes that rim the perimeter. So what we find is that when we see a feature on an animal like the frill of a ceratopsian, it doesn't just have one function to that feature. Instead, it serves a variety of different purposes, not just for protection, but also for jaw muscles, and probably for display and for species identification and recognition of males and females. We only have part of the picture, but what we do is part of something absolutely stunningly gorgeous.
While the physical details varied, all the important features are in place on these dinosaurs. You don't see evidence that they evolved from another specimen. It's just one gloriously diverse group, as if God created different varieties just for the beauty of them. There's still one more creature to look at, a dinosaur with a reputation as a bloodthirsty killer, thanks to the movie Jurassic Park, the velociraptor.
Well, velociraptors are another type of theropod dinosaur. Most of these became meat eaters probably after the curse, after man sinned, and then they started eating each other and anything they could probably get. But however, in the movies, velociraptors are made out to be much bigger than they are. Really, the velociraptor was a lot smaller. Its skull was probably only about 6 or 8 inches long in reality, and probably wasn't nearly as vicious or nearly as smart as they're portrayed in the movies.
We can tell from the fossil record that there are about 60 families of dinosaurs. There are 2 major types based on their hip structures.
All dinosaurs can be classified into either lizard hip dinosaurs or bird hip dinosaurs. There's 3 bones in the pelvis. The pubis bone is the one that comes forward in the T-Rex, and so it kind of supports the belly. And that's the lizard hip style. So theropods like T-Rex and Velociraptor had the lizard hip style. Sauropodomorphs, surprisingly the long necks, also had the lizard hip style. All the other types of dinosaurs, there are the 3 varieties, the ornithopods, the thyreophorans, and the ceratopsians, they all had the bird hip style. What's kind of ironic about that is the secular world says that the T-Rexes and the theropods, the velociraptors turned into birds, but yet they have the lizard hip style.
Do these distinctions matter? Yes. It's important to know whether dinosaurs evolved into modern birds and reptiles, as is widely believed, or whether they always existed just as God designed them. First, we need to look at what a dinosaur is and isn't. We need to understand the difference between them and modern-day reptiles. See, scientists used to think that all dinosaurs moved like alligators, with their legs out to the side, bellies and tails dragging. But Richard Owen and others noticed something in the hip structure of dinosaur fossils. The legs came straight down from the body, which meant they moved more like a rhinoceros or an elephant. We've also found thousands of dinosaur footprints that show an upright position with the feet close together. We find very few signs that any of them drag their bellies on the ground.
Well, one of the features on this femur shows us something that all dinosaurs have, whether it's this little Thescelosaurus, a big T-Rex, or even the Triceratops that's behind me. All of them have a femur that turns inward at the top and points in towards the hip socket, so that this animal's femur sits in a socket sort of like ours, but is physically constructed a little bit different. So all dinosaurs have this feature. There's about 7 other features that all dinosaurs possess in order to identify themselves as dinosaurs. Some of them are bones in the skull, and certain ways that they split. Others are ones such as the neck vertebrae. And it doesn't matter what dinosaur you are, all of them have these particular features. There are other features in the lower parts of the leg and the ankle bones as well. Dinosaurs all held their tails out straight of their body. We know this because we have hundreds, thousands of dinosaur tracks around the world and no evidence of tail drag marks along with them. The footprints are the only thing that are there. They're not dragging their bellies, they're not dragging their tails.
We know from fossil evidence that dinosaurs lived all over the world. Many scientists agree that Earth once had a single supercontinent, and then at some point, and for reasons we'll discuss, this supercontinent broke apart, and the pieces drifted to what we know as the continents today. We know from geology that many of the places that are now dry were once tropical wetlands. We know from fossils that much of the Earth was a warmer climate then, and it was filled with plants like ferns and conifers. Scientists have found evidence of grass in fossilized dung of sauropods. And if you remember from Job 40, the behemoth was a grass eater. Look now at the behemoth, which I made along with you. He eats grass like an ox. But most evolutionists don't believe grass existed then. Whose view makes more sense? Researchers have found original tissue in the brow horn of a fossilized Triceratops, but soft tissue decays at a rapid rate. So that raises questions about how dinosaurs could be tens of millions of years old. And it raises the possibility that they lived in the time of humans. If humans coexisted with dinosaurs, then Noah took them on the ark. But how can that be? Those things were huge. How could they possibly fit?
So we have a variety of dinosaurs, from very, very small dinosaurs, again about the size of birds, all the way up to these big, huge sauropods that lumbered through and made a lot of noise, I'm sure, when they walked. They weighed about 50 tons. What we've discovered, though, is the median size, the average size, we like to call it, of a dinosaur is about the size of an American bison.
When we grow up as children, we're sort of captivated by these massive, huge dinosaurs like a Tyrannosaurus Rex, the big Brontosaurus. But we don't realize that there's just an equal number of dinosaurs that were really small.
How do we know these things? By comparing fossilized remains. There are multiple types of fossils, and we categorize them by how they were made. The best known is mineralization, where bones are petrified, basically turned to stone. And then there's carbonization, which is a little more rare. This is the imprint of soft tissue. We also have molds and casts, some of which show the external imprints of dinosaur skin. There's what we call trace fossils. These are some of the most exciting. Essentially, they are anything that the dinosaur left behind. This can include footprints and even dinosaur dung. We're learning what these creatures ate by studying their droppings. Scientists have actually found gastroliths, round, smooth stones in the stomach region of dinosaurs that help them digest food.
The fifth type of dinosaur fossil is preservation, and they're finding more and more that dinosaur original soft tissues are and have been preserved in the dinosaurs. They're finding blood cells, they're finding blood vessels.
With every new dinosaur find, with new tools to analyze the discoveries, the shadows begin to lift. The mysteries start to fall away, and we're gaining a deeper understanding of these creatures.
So paleontology is a lot like forensics. You're walking into a crime scene, one that's fossils. And because it's fossils, it's a crime scene that doesn't have any witnesses. The only witnesses are the stones that have a story to tell, but it's the job of the paleontologist to tease that out from the fossils and from the rocks in which we find them.
We're getting one step closer to showing that dinosaur fossils are not as old as you've been led to believe.
Thank you. I worked very hard on that.
You're welcome.
That's just my sarcasm showing.
Great job.
All right, so who wants to read some Bible verses? Anybody?
I would, but
Andrew?
my Bible is in my tablet.
I printed them out for you. They're on every single page of paper you guys have. Actually, this is gonna be hard to sit where I can see you all. Actually, sit all the way back here. Read us Job 40, the ones that are on the page, 15 through 18.
Look now at the behemoth, which I made along with you. He eats grass like an ox. See now, his strength is in his hips, and his power is in his stomach muscles. He moves his tail like a cedar, the sinews of his thighs are tightly knit. His bones are like beams of bronze, his ribs like bars of iron.
Right on. Thank you. That's actually God speaking in that book, so it's a very appropriate voice. If you guys ever get a chance to read Job, it's pretty good, but please note there are as many idiots talking in the book as there are smart people talking in the book. So if you just flip to like some random page in Job, you'll find there's actually stuff in there that's flat out wrong. So you have to follow the story and see who's talking. In this verse, though, it's God talking, and so he actually has something pretty cool to say. Who would like to read Genesis 1? Logan, you got that? So it's on the page, Genesis 1, 24 through 25.
Then God said, let the earth bring forth the living creature according to its kind. Cattle and creeping thing and beasts of the earth, each according to its kind. And it was so. And God made the beasts of the earth according to its kind, cattle according to its kind, and everything that creeps on earth according to its kind. And God saw it that it was good.
Nice, thank you. All right, so I mean, all the questions are on the page. You guys are free to ask your own questions, but there's some introductory ones I kind of want to get out there to start our discussion. And so this first one is just really kind of personal. It's your own opinion. What kind of stuff have you heard about the history of dinosaurs prior to today? Like before today, what's just one little tidbit you've heard about dinosaurs? You don't have to believe it. You could believe it. It doesn't really matter. Just something you've heard. Yeah.
They lived 65 million years ago, and that asteroid supposedly came and killed them all.
Okay, good. Andrew?
They were all birds, no matter what.
They're all birds?
All of them were birds.
They're just all birds?
Yeah, they're just birds.
Just birds.
Just really,
There's
really
a
big four-legged birds.
interesting factoid on here. I don't know if it's on page 1 or 2. And it has to do with the classification of dinosaurs. I think it's on the back. And funny thing, the word dinosaur, yeah, it's like one of the first two facts. Dinosaurs are technically defined as land reptiles. So this is something I didn't actually know, but if you say dinosaur, you are excluding the flying reptiles. Isn't that weird? That's actually what the word means. It does not include pterodactyls. It doesn't even include the swimming ones. Super strange to me. Yeah.
You can outrun a T-Rex.
You can outrun a T-Rex?
Yeah, they actually run 4 miles an hour.
4?
Yeah.
That's so not like Jurassic Park.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
That's just
No, it's
messed
not.
up.
Jurassic Park makes it like
I could
60.
mosey faster than that.
Jurassic Park makes it like 60 miles an hour.
I'm pretty sure I
You're
learned
driving
that
like
as a
full
kid.
speed and it's like on your
No, I'm not saying I'm right, but as a kid, I learned that like dinosaurs could, well, that T-Rexes could run like 60 miles an hour.
Yeah, apparently they can only run 4.
That's hilarious.
Really?
Hilarious. Okay, what's something else you guys have heard about dinosaurs? Just give me a few more. Anything. Andrew?
T-Rexes made high-pitched noises.
High-pitched noises. Okay. Jade?
Humans wrote on them because of a show called The Flintstones. Very factual.
That documentary
Yes,
called The Flintstones.
very factual.
Yeah.
It teaches me that.
They were also utilized in quarries.
Yes.
Which makes it ironic that we're digging them
I
up.
also think it's funny that they wrote on the dinosaurs when they had cars.
I know. Why ride a dinosaur when you have a car?
It's so much safer just
Makes
to
no
get in the
sense.
car.
It hurts your feet to.
That Flintstones.
Ah.
Always teaching us things. Yes!
So, if a dinosaur excludes the
You're
flying...
smiling too much. What is the joke?
No, it's not a joke, but
Okay,
if
go
it
ahead.
excludes the flying and the swimming, what is the swimming
Called?
called?
I don't know, not dinosaurs.
Water dinosaur.
I'm an honest person. If you ask me a question I don't know, I'm gonna tell you I don't know. But we can look it up later if you want.
Okay, that sounds good.
Yeah.
So they seem to very briefly try to go over how they couldn't have lived that.
How they couldn't have lived? You wanna
that long ago?
Okay, yeah.
And how do they explain carbon dating? Because we know for a fact that an electron goes around a carbon a certain amount of times.
Okay.
We can read that. So how that just doesn't work.
Great point. Okay. Does anyone want to branch off right now and tackle carbon dating, or do you want to try and go through a little slower? You guys want to branch? Okay, so let's ask question 2, and then we'll go back to that, because I think question 2 is going to make that even more interesting. Alright, so question 2. Why does it even matter, if you're a Christian, about the history of dinosaurs? Why does the history of dinosaurs matter? And this is an opinion question. There isn't like a right answer. I mean, maybe you have a wrong one. But there's multiple right ones here. Yeah.
Because God created them.
Okay. Yeah.
Because if it didn't really matter, it's kind of like how like scientists say it. It's kind of like proving Christian history wrong, and like saying we're completely wrong. Like there was no ark, there was no flood. It was just there was just cavemen. There was no Adam and Eve. It's all a lie and stuff.
That's really good. Yeah. If science can prove that the Bible says the wrong thing about dinosaurs, why would you trust the rest of it?
Yeah.
If science could prove that, those opening chapters of Genesis have no fact to them, then why keep reading the book? If you open the book and it's lies, then why keep going? Yeah.
So that when a non-believer asks you questions about it, you know how to give them answers.
Ooh, that's really good, yeah. There are a lot of times where we can get into arguments and debates that are not helpful, but there are other times where someone actually wants to believe in God, and what they've been told about science actually is holding them back. And in those instances, if you can give them a few short answers that just says there might be more to science than what you've been told, then that can really help those people. Really help them. Alright, yeah.
Because history repeats itself.
Oh, not a bad point, actually. Yeah, history often repeats itself. Yeah.
So, it's really important, I guess, because the Bible doesn't really speak of it, and
Be very specific. It meaning
those times.
Okay.
Like specifically, it doesn't say clearly. So I wonder why God didn't say it clearly, so we could all
About what
understand
times?
it.
Because I'm getting a little lost in the non-specifics.
Well,
65 million years ago.
like, why didn't he make my Bible more clear so it was obvious what it meant?
Okay. There's a lot of times where God tries to be clear, and he does a good job of it. And there's a lot of times where he intentionally is not clear. And sometimes the most we get out of those chapters is to figure out why. Why wasn't he abundantly clear about that? And there's usually a really good answer to that. So to tackle carbon dating, okay, try and think, if you guys can, of an hourglass. You guys know what an hourglass is? You got your sand up top, you got it flowing down to the bottom, and you can tell time by an hourglass. Because you can take the same hourglass and turn it over, start it from 0, and time how long it takes to go from 0 back to 100% full at the bottom. And then you just keep on flipping it and checking it, and then you'll know, like, okay, this hourglass takes exactly 60 seconds, this hourglass takes exactly an hour, this, you know, you can check that hourglass, and then from that point on it's reliable. The problem with carbon dating is the only thing we know absolutely for certain, for sure, is exactly what you said. We know how fast sand goes through the middle. That's what we know. We know the transition rate from top to bottom. What we don't know is actually more than that transition rate. We don't know how full the bottom was when the clock started, because there's no evidence to suggest that, you know, carbon-14 didn't exist in living things. There also isn't any indication of what the starting amount was. So if you don't know how much sand started up top when the creature died, and you don't know how much sand started at the bottom when the creature died, and you only know the rate, can you actually predict how long a sand timer's been running when you come across it? No, because in real life we would only do it by turning the sand timer back over again and then checking it. And you can't do that with a dead thing. You can't bring it back to life and then say, okay, now unlive your life. Go through time backwards. And then let's do it again. Let's figure out how it goes. So what we're looking at with carbon dating is we're looking at a system that doesn't actually tell us anything we don't know. It can only tell us something if we make an assumption. If we make an assumption that we know how full the top was and how full the bottom was, and we do know how fast the middle can go through, then after those two assumptions, we can then make a calculation that says it was yay old. But there's a further problem with carbon dating. Even though we claim to know exactly what that rate is, if you take the same sample, split it into 3 pieces, and send it to 3 different labs, they will give you 3 different answers as to how old the thing is. And that just says to me, they don't agree on the math. If they agreed on the math, you should get the same answer all 3 times, and within a margin of error. I understand that the process isn't perfect. You're counting a sample set out of a much larger object, because you can't sit there and count every molecule. That just isn't realistic. But you should at least get within margin of error, and they don't. Generally what happens when they do carbon dating on a specimen is they redo the carbon dating until it falls within the zone of where they thought that dirt it came out of was that old. So let's say they thought that dirt was from the 90 million to the 95 million area, then they would keep doing the carbon dating until they got something between 90 and 95 million. And when they hit something that was like 94.6, like boom, there it is, it's 94.6 years old. But they throw out all the results that were anything other than between 90 and 95. That's not good science. Then there's the odd fact that the guy who invented carbon dating says it works to about 10,000 years, and after that it's unreliable. Like, if you try and do the math for any date longer than 10,000 years, the math isn't precise enough for you to get any usable, meaningful numbers out of it.
That's not really helpful because
It's not really helpful because scientists are telling us that most of the things we're digging up are older than 10,000 years. So you go throwing carbon dating at it and you're saying, I think this flashlight is good for opening locks. Like, you're using a tool that is not meant for that job. It's a great tool, but it's not a perfect tool. You can't just use it in every circumstance and have it perfectly work out. Yeah.
So now I've heard, I guess, like the concept of time. I've heard a lot of people, Christians, say that the Earth is around 36,000 years old.
36,000. I don't even know where that number comes from.
I've heard 36,000 a lot of times. And I'm quite confused because if you look in the distant universe, in different areas, we know for a fact that if it was made 36,000 years ago, the floor would literally be lava right now.
The floor would be lava?
Literally.
Okay.
We would
You'll have to walk me there slowly. I'm not following.
Okay, well, if the Earth was only made 36,000 years ago,
Okay.
then there would literally be nuclear fusion still occurring on the surface. The heavy metals
But
wouldn't
that's
be sunken.
assuming a certain kind of creation, a certain kind of the Earth was made.
Yes.
Okay, but that's not what God said he did.
Then, so what? My question is, why did he make Earth a certain way and all the other planets a different way?
Well, I'm pretty sure he didn't stick any people on the other planets.
because we're special.
Then why did he make them?
That's a really good question,
For us-
actually.
so us
He
not to
actually
get
does
bored.
explain that in the Bible. He says he made them so that we could look at them and see his majesty.
So we don't get bored.
It was kind of an art project of God's, if you want to look at it in a simplistic way.
Are we allowed to look at them?
I don't see why not. But I do think that's slightly outside the realm of what he made them for. He made them for a display of his power. If he made the earth in a vacuum and sustained it by some, constant miracle, he was just constantly providing heat, constantly providing light, and constantly, making sure that everything didn't just spin off, then that'd be cool too. And that'd be amazing. But you'd look out and you just see black. And there'd be nothing there. And you wouldn't really understand or be able to understand if he was constantly doing a miracle to keep everything on the planet, how everything was staying here. Why aren't we just flying off of it? So instead, he creates this whole universe with physics at work so that we can look and see how ridiculous it is that there is even one planet that can sustain life and sustain a ton of life. All right, yeah.
Now, from what I know, why God wanted to create people, there were angels up in heaven with him during that time before he made humans, but I just heard that, it was kind of like, there was angels, but there was something missing, like there was something missing to the picture. Like he thought he had some things already, but he thought there was something missing, and that was people, and he figured that out, and he did so.
I like the way you say that. I think one of the key things that was missing there was that free will love. That love back and then forth. So that God loves us and then we freely decide, no duress, no force, no you have to, we decide to love him back. That's a relationship I don't think he and the angels has the same kind of.
Yeah.
Now they do have some free will. I mean, you look through the Bible, you can find lots of instances of it. But it definitely was different with us. Humanity has a totally different kind of free will than the angels do. All right, so question 3. Is there anything you're hoping in weeks 2, 3, or 4 the videos will answer? Any questions you have, you're like dying, please videos, give us something about that. Anything like that. Yeah.
Like how the dinosaurs got buried.
Okay, how they all got buried. Good. Yeah, Jaden.
Like the creatures that scientists say lived before the dinosaurs.
Okay, so prehistoric animals that aren't dinosaurs. Okay. Yeah.
If the dinosaurs did go on Noah's Ark, how would you fit them in?
Ooh, good one. Yeah.
Like the name of the water and flying ones.
Oh, okay. Well, I'll just look that one up because I've already watched the videos. That one's not in there. Every other one you guys said. That's later on in the videos. That is going to get answered in there. Yeah.
Were they all alive at the same time?
All the dinosaurs alive at the same time. Good question. Yeah.
How did they get there?
How did they get there?
Get alive?
God.
Ooh, okay.
God.
Yeah. Why dinosaurs?
Yeah.
Why anything?
Why anything? Ooh, that might be past the videos. We'll talk about that for sure, though. Yeah.
What time they actually went extinct at, or do they believe they went extinct at?
Okay, yeah, that's gonna get answered. Yeah.
Yay.
What about dragons?
What about dragons? That's actually week
That's actually
2. That's next week.
Yay.
Dragons
Stole
next
my
week.
question.
Wait, they're actually dragons.
You stole it. You have to come back
Next week.
Yay.
Oh, you forgot your other one?
Oh, the dragons are dumb. Oh, it is.
So why is there evidence of asphyxiation as cause of death for a lot of dinosaurs?
That's a really good question.
Dude, what was?
Right on.
And why isn't there, skin and different parts of the body do strange things when they sit in water for a period of time when they die?
Yeah.
And why doesn't it look like that if they were all killed by a flood?
Okay. Well, it's not going to get into those specifics, but I can go ahead and give you a few quick answers.
One more thing though, if God decided to just make it that way, make it look that way, then why? Why did he come?
You say it, and that
Okay,
I
I'm
can't
sorry.
answer that.
I'm really bad at that.
That's okay. That's okay.
Why did he make the dinosaurs look like they died on land and they really died in water?
Oh, okay.
Like, what's
I
the
don't think it
reason for
looks like that necessarily. They're buried under dirt. So that's not necessarily looking like they died
Yeah,
underwater.
When you die in water, their skin, I forget exactly what it is.
So let me just go ahead and throw this answer out there. Nothing in great numbers really died like floating around in water. You would basically, like you're saying, you'd puff up, you'd bloat. There's all these different deformities that happen when you just sit drowning and you're just like floating in water. So most of these would be on land and a tidal wave would come wash over, but it wouldn't be like a pure water, oh no, I'm drowning now kind of wave. It would be like a mudslide. When you have flooding that goes on over huge bodies of land, over huge continent-sized pieces of land, you don't just have like freshwater waves come over and you're like drowned to death. So you wouldn't die of asphyxiation. You would die because a wall of mass just crushed you. So what we do find oftentimes is we find their rib cages not spread out at their normal distance, and you actually see all the way down the vertebra disconnections of the rib bones from the vertebra, and the rib bones are like touching. And so instead of it being like half of a circle of rib bones, you see it like this weird kind of fish shape where the rib bones are almost touching. So that makes perfect sense if you're sitting under a huge amount of weight and your lungs just collapse and all the air's gone, and now you're just sitting under soil. The other side of that is when you're buried under moist soil, it actually doesn't do the same things that being floating around in water would do. So your skin doesn't get all weird. It actually has that mummifying effect. But it is proportionate to how much water we're talking about. So in well-draining soils like sand, you get better mummification. In less well-draining soils where the water sits there and sits there and sits there, we don't get skin. It rots away, it's gone, we don't ever see it again. You don't get good prints of it. So it has a lot to do with the kind of soil that was in the water where the dinosaur gets buried. Alright.
Side note to that, temperature makes a big difference as well.
Yes, it does. Yeah, Andrew.
I was gonna ask who the guy in the picture is.
He's just one of the scientists who's in the video series. I went through the trailer, not the video, to find him, because that's where my junior hires asked me to Photoshop some donuts onto the dinosaurs. So that's my Photoshopping. I have choice Photoshop skills. No, I don't. It's sarcasm again. Alright, Braden, what's up?
You said Braden.
His name is Jaden.
Jaden.
I'm offended.
You should be. Sorry?
Sadness.
I don't have a lot of brains. I'm sorry. Go for it. Yeah, just the one.
I want to know just how true this would be. So I've had people, I've talked to them about dinosaurs, and they've said that if the flood truly did happen, and they weren't talking about how you said like it's just a wave of sheer force, they were saying it like it just rained, and then it got higher and higher and higher, and they just drowned to death. They said that if they truly did drown to death, that their skin, like all their flesh and all their body parts would get like, I don't know how they said it. They said they would like get saved, like it wouldn't go away. Like when you do drown, this actually is a true fact though. When you do drown, your skin stays on longer. It's getting
moisturized.
Yeah, it's getting replenished and stuff by the water.
That's an interesting way to look at it. Sure.
So it stays on a little bit longer.
There's a dark flip side to that, and that's that if you were floating that long, your bones wouldn't necessarily all get buried together.
Yeah.
Your bones would start to kind of be driftwood.
And then they were like, how come there's no skin and stuff on the bones?
Here's the weirder flip side that they don't mention, and that's that if there isn't a flood burying mass quantities of animals all at the same time under different layers based on different soil densities, then why do we have so many stinking fossils in the first place? There isn't enough time, even in the evolutionist timescale, to give us the sheer amount of fossils that we have without rapid burial of an entire series of ecosystems. There's just too many fossils. The only reason you even get fossils is when something gets buried right after death. Something dies, it doesn't turn into a fossil, it rots, it turns into dirt. You don't get to dig that up. Well, you would, but you'd miss it, because it'd just be dirt. So you'd need a lot of circumstances where things are constantly getting buried over by soil. Again, and again, and again, and again. And honestly, we don't have evidence of lots and lots and lots of tiny floods on our planet. We have evidence of a large cataclysmic world-covering flood. That's the other thing too, is that the speed at which we're talking about is not the pitter-patter, drippy-drop rain. If the Bible's account is to be believed, then the time span that the flood was rising the waters up is really short. And the Bible says that the tallest mountains were covered. Now, granted, Mount Everest might not have even existed back then. There's a really good chance that during all this shifting of landmass is where we got today's mountains. So we have no real way of telling what then's tallest mountains were. But let's just say that they're at least Mount Everest height or average height. Still, to go from where the sea level is to those mountains heights in just a few months, that's not pitter-patter rain, okay? That is like ridiculous amounts of rain. That's humongous. So you're not talking about like gentle, oh look, the ocean is coming in a little higher than high tide. We're talking walls of water just going all over the place. It would be drastic. Okay, a million questions. Let's see, should we even tackle these? No. Yeah, some of these aren't as important as they could be, I guess. I know you guys have lots of questions. I do want to save a little bit for next week. I'd like you guys to come back dying to ask you a question, rather than we just answer everything today and you're like, I don't like donuts that much. I'll see you later. I do want to ask this one, though. Do you guys know about any instances of fossils showing signs of being buried in a flood?
No.
There were some in the video, so if you're listening, you might actually like recall one or two.
Yes.
Yeah?
The one was sand.
Okay.
Because something must have like washed over a ton of sand over it,
Yeah.
so that it would fossilize quickly.
Yeah. Quicksand doesn't really answer the question. It would have to be something more drastic than that, because quicksand doesn't really form deep enough to fully bury a
I'm just
dinosaur
saying
like the ones
it
we're
would
talking
have to
about.
go-
And also
it
you
would
won't
have
sink in
to. The flood would have to move it over it quickly.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, yeah.
I had a question. Do these videos cover like where the water came from?
Where the water came from? No, the Bible does that.
Sky. Heaven.
They might mention it. I don't
That
think
was my
they
question.
do.
It was heaven's floodgate.
So
Opened heaven's floodgate.
try and spin this for a second. Think about all the things the Bible said. The Bible actually said it didn't rain until the flood with Noah in the boat. It didn't rain until. So you've got to ask that question, the $1 million question, how in the world did things survive for, as the Bible says, about 1,500 years with no rain? That's kind of ridiculous to think about. So either A, Bible's completely wrong, we should just throw it away, or there's an answer. There's a legitimate, realistic, follows science answer that answers that question, and the Bible actually has it on its pages. It says that God caused it to do enough every night over the whole planet so that there was enough moisture for all the plants and the animals to survive. That's a lot to do. So then you have to ask a different question. If there's that much moisture in the atmosphere, where does it go if not forming clouds and raining and, the whole rain cycle? That's a question the Bible does not go so far as to answer. And so we get to speculate. We get to create theories. We get to try and test them. We get to try and figure that out. There's lots of theories. There's theories like the cloud bank in the sky would have been so thick you most likely wouldn't have been able to see stars on most nights. There's theories like it would rise up into the atmosphere so high and then freeze, and there'd literally be an ice shell around the entire planet. There's all kinds of theories. The trouble is you can only test them in small scale, because we can't actually refill the atmosphere on the Earth with that much moisture to see what would happen. We don't have the machinery of the scale to do something like that. But we can try it in small scale and see what it does, or try it in computer models and see what it does. And so far, the ice one actually holds a bit of water, no pun intended. It does work. The other side of it is, over time, the Earth has been accruing more and more water, and we've been trying to figure out how, and we've discovered, scientists have discovered, several ways that water actually gets added to our ecosystem from essentially nowhere, but from somewhere. And one of them is volcanoes actually produce water. You just don't notice it because they're so stinking hot. You never see it. It's constantly vapor as it's coming up from under the crust. So you would never see it. You'd never realize that a volcano is spewing water into the atmosphere, but it does. And the other one is that as we see shooting stars burning up in the atmosphere, some of those actually contain large amounts of ice. And so it just burns up in the atmosphere, releases a steam. You'd never see it except the little, rock that's burning up in the atmosphere. And you get these little tiny amounts of water just slowly being added. Basically, the idea is that God could just, if he wants, add more water. If he wants to throw a bunch of asteroids at the atmosphere all at once, if he wants to, get the volcanoes really churning, he can do that. So he has ways of getting water into our atmosphere, into our ecosystem. Yeah.
Did the Bible ever say how big Noah's Ark was?
It does. It gives actually precise dimensions. And if you guys want, I've got one of those little wheelie things where you walk and it measures your distance. We can go out in the parking lot next week or the week after, whenever you guys want to. We can just sit there and case off how big Noah's Ark is. It just about fits, if memory serves, because we did this once before, if you took the church building, and again, this is memory, so don't laugh at me too hard if I remeasure it and I'm totally wrong. But I think it's about the same width as the church building, about a church building and a half tall, our church building and a half tall, and it's from like that end of the building to the back fence.
Oh wow.
And that's all from memory, but we'll remeasure it next week if you guys want. So it was big. It was really big. The flip side of that is that dinosaurs, like most animals, they aren't born at these massive, ridiculous sizes. They're born at relatively small sizes. Noah knew what he was doing. God knew what he was doing. They're going to try and repopulate a planet in a few months. So you're not going to bring Grandma and Grandpa Dinosaur with you. You're probably not even going to bring Mommy and Daddy Dinosaur with you. You're going to bring teenage dinosaurs with you. That would be the best scenario. A dinosaur that's right before childbearing age, just about to have children. That's the age you want to hit. So that as soon as they get off the ark, they're ready, and they have the longest stretch of time to keep on having babies. So what you're aiming at there is the medium dinosaurs. Because a lot of the dinosaurs, the max size is like a rhinoceros. So you get the teenage of that guy, and he's like a wolf. He's like a dog. He's not that big. So again, God and Noah weren't idiots. So they walk, through the forest. They see like the Brontosaurus with its giant, ridiculous neck, and they're like, "Oh, I picked that one." No, that's stupid. Like, why would you do that? I'm gonna take the tiny ones, not the thing that will have to poke its head out the top of the ark. That's not a good decision. So yeah, you just pick smaller dinosaurs. Yeah, Jacob.
They just have to take a blue and a pink one because that'll be important later.
That's how you tell, right? The blue. Did you guys ever do that when you were like taking the little Flintstones vitamins, like avoid certain colors? Because like, that one's for the girls. Don't eat those ones. I was paranoid. I thought if you ate too many pink girl vitamins, you'd get turned into a girl. It's a weird kid. Yeah.
So if dinosaurs, assuming that they were on the ark,
Sure.
where'd they go?
After that, great question. Ice Age. Fun fact about science that isn't really well explained. When they've run all the different theories through the computer simulations, because again, we can't really repeat these things, how do you get an ice age? So they've tried all the different theories. How do you get an ice age? And as they run it through the computer simulations, they don't work. You can't make an ice age. And so then someone thought, okay, well, let's try a worldwide flood. So they just like bump up the water until you've got a worldwide flood, run through the physics simulation, and as the water subsides, as the continents recenter themselves and find their new positions, the extra water on the planet causes a massive cooling effect. And it actually has the ability to create ice caps that will extend down in colder, creating colder climates as they go into, I can't remember the numbers, but I remember the graph in my head. So it's like if this was the planet, the icy zone would come down about that far from the top and about that high from the bottom. And so you'd have a temperate zone that's about as thick as like our hottest climate right around the equator, and everything else would be insanely cold. And so oddly enough, the ark took off, as far as we know. We're not great on this because the continents probably were moving during the flood, took off somewhere in the temperate zone, but it actually landed a bit north. And so it would have landed right near an icier, colder zone. Now that wouldn't have happened like that, boom, everything's frozen. It would have happened slowly over the next 200 years, and then subsided slowly over the following 200 years. So Ice Age, about 400 years after the flood, the center of that 400 years being the coldest of all. And so likely you have a bunch of giant reptiles that aren't gonna fare well in cold climates. They would all die massively, like way faster than other animals would that could take shelter easier, that have warm blood systems, that have all these other things going for them. Yeah.
Yeah, so I can understand why meteorites would actually produce water in our atmosphere, because the atmosphere at such a high altitude is very cold, it can be very hot, but during the night, that's where you see them more, so it's actually cold.
It's that big temperature difference, and then all the friction. All the friction as they burn through.
All that ice just breaks off, and it
just melts.
Yeah, it just melts into water, and I just wanted to mention that. It was big water outlets like during the flood, because it took a while, 40 days and 40 nights. That's from what I know from the Bible. That's how long it took for the flood to occur, because it had to cover all the highest mountains and stuff. And the way the world was probably back then, there was probably taller things, probably like.
It's hard to say. We don't really get to know that.
I don't know, but
could be taller, could be shorter.
Yeah, it could be. Yeah, but that's how much from what I know.
Cool. Yeah.
So people back in the Bible times, they lived quite a bit longer, correct?
Well, yeah, especially before Noah's flood. It started to taper off afterwards.
So the reason for that is because when it rained, the first time it rained, it allowed more radiation.
It's
and that
very
radiation
likely.
Actually kills us.
Yeah.
So.
It's a nice fitting little scenario that you have slowly the lifespans dying down. And one of the things we've actually figured out is that genetic decay has a lot to do with the radiation we experience in life.
Why is
And that's why we actually have whole diseases and sicknesses and causes of death if you're exposed to really high amounts of radiation, because your cells just stop working. And so lifespan has a lot to do with how well your cells work on that microscopic level. So if we're getting more and more radiation, lifespans are going to keep decreasing. Mutations that cause shorter lifespans are going to keep finding their way into the gene pool. And eventually, yeah, you just don't have the same lifespans you used to. Yeah.
So, like, I understand that the atmosphere would filter out neutron radiation, but there's so many different types of radiation.
There's a lot, yeah.
That would have damaged us. Like, that's only one small part on the spectrum.
Yeah.
And there is a lot more different types of radiation that would also do a lot of damage to us. And I don't understand the scale of how we lived 300 years.
No, it's more than that, actually. The Bible claims that a lot of the people that are named, and you find out how old they were, because it doesn't name everyone. There's thousands of people, millions of people. But the ones that it names and mentions, from Adam down to Noah, Noah was actually one of the younger guys. A lot of those guys in that lineage lived over 900 years.
Well, I just don't understand the scale of how taking away one of those radiation, I guess, types of radiation can cause such a dramatic effect when there's so much other radiation that's doing just as much damage.
Yeah, no, it would have to be a multiplicity of factors, okay? So one of the things we have to remember is, if the Bible's true again, we're starting with one man, one woman that progenerates the entire population of humans, and then it reshrinks again with Noah, and then it starts increasing again. So there would have to be some other concessions made if that's to be true. One of the concessions would be that their DNA would have to be more perfect than our DNA. Otherwise, A, they shouldn't be able to live, past 900. But B, they wouldn't have been able to contain all the genetic code for multiple different civilizations, races. So their DNA would have to look a bit different than ours. And I don't mean like drastically different. I just mean closer to perfection. And remember, again, if the Bible is true, God's creating these two people as perfect. Sin entered after the fact. The fall, death, that entered after the fact. So God intended them to be able to physically live forever. That is a very far thing away from us. That's not 900 years far away from us. That's like ridiculous far away from us. So for Adam and Eve to live forever, it would have to be crazy different than us. So what that tells me is that as you keep on having baby after baby after baby, and we keep on going, and DNA is just shifting and changing, and the blocks are getting flipped all over the place, it's not going to stay as perfect. I don't know how much of that is natural cause and effect, just, through the ages, but I think a lot of it actually has to do with the curse. Because if God intended everything to be perfect, he probably didn't intend for, Adam and Eve's kids to be less perfect. So at the curse, when they sin and God said, boom, you're cursed, then he probably made some adjustments. It wouldn't be the only adjustment. There was also creatures that would have been, at that point, vegetarian, and now they're not. And so he would have had to make a lot of different adjustments. There's also a point right around Noah's flood where God actually says, part of the punishment, I'm going to shorten everyone's lifespan. So there's also a side to this argument, which is that God doesn't have to play by the rules when he doesn't feel like it. And if he wants to use a miracle to get the job done and shorten everyone's lifespan, he can just use a miracle. And that's not always satisfactory when we're looking for a science answer. I know. And so I hate looking for that answer. I like to look for the science answer, and then I can fall back on miracle if I have to. Which is why I've looked into all this stuff like DNA. Because I prefer to just say, well, it makes sense. Rather than say, well, God must have enacted a miracle, even though he didn't say specifically that he did enact a miracle. Usually he tells us those things. Yeah, Logan.
Alright, so you've seen not the movie, but the Ice Age movie with the dinosaurs in it?
There's a lot of Ice Age movies. I have not seen them all.
Yeah, Ice Age, the dinosaurs.
I haven't seen that one, no. I think I saw like the first, second, maybe third, and then... Is this the third?
Yeah.
Okay, I haven't seen the third then. I take it all back.
Okay, so there's so they find dinosaurs underneath the Ice Age. How does that work?
That's a cartoon movie. That's how that works.
I know, but
I can't even begin to try and approach the logic of a cartoon movie. I'm sorry. They don't have to use science to make the movie. They can just make the movie. All right. We have some more questions. Let's check our time. 8:15. We have 15 minutes left. Let's see if I want to ask. Okay. Final question, then we can go back to whatever random thing you guys do want to ask. This is just the last one off the sheet we'll do. Go to question 9. So, the idea that dinosaurs lived at the same time as humans is revolutionary. I know for a lot of you guys, for different reasons. Some of you guys just flat out can't believe it. Some of you guys were told otherwise. Some of you guys just never really gave this a second thought, and that's okay. But I'm just curious, if that's a new idea, if dinosaurs living at the same time as humans, if that's a brand new idea to you, or it's just an idea you don't believe in right now, either way, would you be open to looking at more evidence, to reading the scriptures and seeing if it makes as much or more sense than dinosaurs and humans being separated by millions of years? Would you be open to looking at that? Just a quick show of a hand if you're open to that. If you're not open to that, it's okay. You guys don't have to stop coming if you don't want to learn this kind of stuff. You don't want to look into it. You guys can just come and enjoy donuts. I mean, there's even leftover donuts. I just want to know, like, are you guys really into this, or are you just like, well, I come every Friday, so here I am. Because I don't want to like cram anything down your guys' throat. I just want to show you some evidence, let you guys make the call, let you guys make the decision. And if it doesn't amount to a hill of beans, if it doesn't add up to you, and that's okay. You won't offend me that you don't believe what I believe. You won't offend me that you've watched a bunch of videos and feel like you wasted your time. That's fine. And I'm sorry a little bit. But I do want to share this stuff with you guys because I honestly do believe that if you get out of your parents' house at some point and never tried to figure out science and the Bible, do they go together, you'll probably stop coming to church. That's what I honestly believe. That if you can't square science in the Bible before you're out of your parents' house, we'll probably never see you again. And why do I believe that? Because most of the adults in our church, in fact, a lot of your parents, did not come to church, did not believe in God between high school and being here now. Most of them walked away. Most of them said, you know what, science and the Bible don't really go together, so I quit. And they left. And it wasn't until later in life that they started squaring things in their head, that they started checking what they believed, that they then found their way back to God. And so that's why I honestly believe that, because I've seen it happen. This isn't my first year in junior high. I've been held back a lot. Been here an awful long time, and maybe one day I'll get to graduate. We'll see. But I'm not afraid for you guys. I'm not worried about you guys. You guys are smart. What I'm worried about is that the world gets more time with you than we do. What I'm worried about is that your science books have a lot more pages in them that you read than your Bibles. That scares me. That scares me, because it's like a tug of war that doesn't have equal amount of people on either side. That's just not fair. You guys go to school how many days a week? 4? All right, we're all beating up him afterwards, right? That's not cool. It's supposed to be 5. I'm just kidding. Sometimes it's 2. All right, real quick. Who's homeschooled? Okay, who totally does school for like 9 hours a day, like 1 day a week, so they can just not do school the rest of the week?
I do it.
Yeah, I did that. I did that.
Yeah, well,
Okay, I wanted to make sure.
For the whole day, and I just do all my work.
I'd like call up my friend who was homeschooled and be like, hey, you want to get together on Friday? He's like, yeah, let's just cram on Thursday. Cool. And we cram Thursday and we get Friday off. We loved it. It was fantastic. We get like a 3-day weekend together. It was amazing. Homeschool. Not for everyone. But if you have good parents who like to hang out with you and actually help you with your homework, then maybe for you. We're getting towards the end. If you guys still have some of those questions, hang out, talk. What I'd like to do, Wade, if it's cool with you, is maybe if people still want to talk about dinosaurs and ancient history, stay in junior high room. And if not talk about dinosaurs, not talk about ancient history, not stay in junior high room. Does that sound acceptable? Okay, cool. Yes, there's leftover donuts, but here's how we're going to do it, because there's not as many of them as you. Snap them in half. It's real simple. There's knives over there for the gooier ones. You can cut them in half. Old-fashioned snap, really nice. So you guys can have a half more donut. I think we're good on that. If you have more questions, just stay here. If you don't have more questions, grab a donut and head back to the high school room. If you're a junior higher, don't head back to the high school room. Oh! Phone bucket! Yes, phone bucket. Slow! Yes! It's like the phone bucket. Since that 50 Geiger.
Come on, I don't even have my phone in there, but I'm going to steal
Is you? You get $1 free
Oh, guys.
from the snack.
Oh. That was
Alright
my
guys,
brand
careful
new
not to step
phone
on the
I
phone.
just- He stole my phone!
Jaden, you were so close to winning, too.
Oh, I don't want those phones.
Thank you, Daniel.
I love y'all. Have a great night. Hey!
Wow, he said watches. He stole my phone. He stole my phone.
Huh? That's a really interesting question. I think the answer is a little more complex than you realize. God doesn't interfere with the earth willy-nilly. Those are both Jacobs. God doesn't interfere with the earth willy-nilly. He's not just like, hey, let's play. You know what I mean? He always has a purpose behind what he's doing. And his purpose was originally creating us so we can have fellowship with him, to have a relationship with it. But then second, after that, the whole point of him doing everything he did was all this like single-minded purpose. And it was to get Jesus here. That was the whole point, was get Jesus here. Because without Jesus, we're separated from God and we stay separated. So, the real question is not why didn't God save the dinosaurs? The real question is, would the dinosaurs have got Jesus here any better, faster, more amazing? And I think the answer is no. And so in that sense, God doesn't have a part in his master plan in which he needs to save them. They're just part of cause and effect, natural things happening. So the other side of it is, I don't think dinosaurs died out all as quickly as we're led to believe. The reason why people think dinosaurs died out rapidly is because their fossils stopped appearing in taller layers of soil, okay? But if you're imagining that the Bible's true, then they all got buried during the flood. All the dinosaurs that lived post-flood wouldn't have necessarily been fossilized. They just die, they get buried normally, like really, really slow, and they just turn into dirt really, really slowly. And so we wouldn't have any more fossils after a certain point because they weren't dying in massive floodwaters. So the other flip side of this is, if the dinosaurs didn't live as long as they used to, kind of like how humans didn't live as long as they used to, they would never have got up to the sizes that they used to. Because it takes a long time to get giant. You have to slowly grow there. You can't just like have a growth spurt from like 10 feet to 50 feet. Your bones would like snap out of your skin. It'd be disgusting. So like, they wouldn't get to those ridiculous heights like they used to back in the day after the flood. They wouldn't get fossilized like they did before the flood. So there's a lot. Really, I don't think the dinosaurs should show up in the fossil record, either if they kept on surviving. And I think they kept on surviving. Because you've got guys like Job where after the flood and God's talking to him about dinosaurs, and Job just answers like he knows what he's talking about. Well, if they're all buried under the ground, that's weird. If Job just answers like, oh yeah, I know what you're talking about, and he's never seen one, why would he say that? I mean, we also have carvings in rock from after the flood, as far as we can tell. It's hard to be absolutely sure, but the buildings are still standing, so we're pretty sure it was after the flood. But carvings in rock of dinosaurs, like with skin off. Like, they're a proper representation of what a dinosaur looks like. And that would be strange if the humans who carved the rocks had never seen a dinosaur. So I think a lot of dinosaurs lived after the flood, but they weren't as plentiful. There wasn't as many of them. Yes, and because of that ice age. The ice age would have seriously stunted their ability to spread out. Anyone who went too far north or too far south, boom, dead. Never to produce more dinosaurs ever again. So there would have been a much smaller amount than those 60 we find all over the planet buried as fossils. Because we have like 60 different kinds we can dig up from under the earth, but I don't think all of those made it through the ice age. I think a lot of them died before that, or during. So,
This guy's not dumb. Just didn't mean to mess up the party.
yeah. Well, and that's just it. We're learning more and more from science as time goes on. So, like, one of the things we didn't think possible turns out to be totally true. We didn't think that dinosaurs could live close to us because we never found any soft tissue. Soft tissue is like muscle fibers, blood vessels, all that stuff that only lives, that's not the right word, that only lasts for a few thousand years and then it's gone. It turns to dust, it does not fossilize well. Yeah, so we thought, dinosaurs couldn't live recently because we've never found those soft tissues that would survive if they were recent. Turns out we just weren't looking in the right place. You cut open the dinosaur bones that people were like so afraid to break. They were so afraid to cut into, they would never do it. And you cut them open, and inside is soft tissue. Inside the fossilized layer is blood vessels that are still complete. There are blood cells that you can literally look at under a microscope, and they still have all their parts inside the cells. So these things have been preserved well, but even preserved well, those kind of soft tissue should never last more than a few thousand years. They should absolutely break down and turn into like jelly or dirt after a certain point. After millions of years, there's no way they could still survive. And we're finding these now in all different kinds of dinosaurs. We just have to be willing to take our precious fossils that are so rare and break them. And then we find these things. Yeah, and some of the time they do. They like crack them open, take a sample, put them back together, and hope no one in the museum notices. But yeah, the first time it was discovered was by accident. Someone dropped the bone, and it cracked, and everyone's like, he's fired. And then they discover something monumental. And the sad part was that first discovery where the guy dropped the bone by accident, they didn't believe these scientists were telling the truth because it was the first time it was ever discovered. What they were saying was things that last a few thousand years were discovered inside a fossil that's millions of years old. So they honestly discredited, they like took all their articles out of the research papers. They tried to ban these scientists from doing science. And then another scientist says, I found the same thing, guys. And then another scientist, and then another scientist. And, you know, after decades of people saying, I found it too, now they're finally starting to admit, yeah, these things exist. But the sad thing is, it's still not in textbooks. The fact that dinosaurs have things in them that can't last more than a few thousand years still doesn't end up in textbooks. That bothers me. Because that's just like kind of lying to the kids. You're just saying like, we know all these things about dinosaurs and we'll share it with you. But really like willing to share some tiny little fraction. And
do you know what time it is?
That's not cool. It is 8:27. Aha! The Wii U is at my house because it's mine. I brought it special for that night only. I am so sorry. Yeah, it's a very special night. Generally, only the video games you'll see over in that little corner is what's here. You'll notice all the Xboxes are gone, the Wii U's gone. That was all brought in special. Those were like the leader's own home consoles. They brought in and loaned to us for that night.
Okay. I thought that was a little extra rare, you know.
Like their lifespan? That's a really, really hard question. So, generally speaking, we figure out how long something lives for by watching it live. So we can take like, you know, an animal that dies when it's 5, look at its bones. Take an animal that dies when it's 30, look at its bones, and then we can decide, okay, now we know, we saw this dead 5-year-old animal, we saw this dead 30-year-old animal, how fast the bones grow. Then if we find bones somewhere, we know how old that animal was. The problem is, we've never come across a living dinosaur in recent history and known how old it was, and then looked at its bones when it died, so we don't get to know. It's really, really hard to determine. So there's things we can try and maybe be right about, but it's kind of just a well-educated guess. So like how much the bones have developed, so like layers, almost like rings on a tree. You can try and count the different layers of calcium deposits and all those things. You can try and decide, well, maybe it's like these reptiles, or maybe it's like rhinoceroses, or maybe it's like these other animals, and you compare what you find in their bones to what you find in the animals that we know about, and we try and decide, okay, how old do we think it is? And we can make guesses. And so some of the guesses are that they lived to about, 50 years, and then that was it. They can only live to 50 years. Some of the guesses are they lived over 1,000 years. But we don't really have a way to double check ourselves to see whose math is right. And so we just make educated guesses. And a lot of different scientists have different opinions, and we don't really know which one's right. It's kind of a bummer. If we just so happen to stumble across like the Loch Ness Monster one day and found that it had babies, then suddenly like most of our questions would get answered. But
even if it's a male or female.
So it's magic. Okay.
I mean, chickens. Chickens can lay. What chickens can lay eggs unfertilized? Just they won't have babies.
Yeah. That's different than a dude having an egg.
Can I wear a dinosaur shirt on dinosaur?
I tried. I have 2 dinosaur shirts to my name. Only 2. They both, oddly enough, have velociraptors. One is this Victorian velociraptor. The other one is a silhouette of a velociraptor with a big red no sign through it. Because if anyone ever figures out the Jurassic Park science and makes dinosaurs again, I want to tell them you can't have velociraptors. You can brachiosaur. You can make anything you want. Triceratops, it's all game. But don't you dare bring the velociraptors back to life.
Otherwise they'll kill you.
I've seen the movies. I know what will happen.
I mean,
They can work door latches.
Yeah. I mean, did you know in that movie, there's actually a hand that does this and pushes his tail down?
Really?
Yeah, like when he's opening the latch and he opens the door, you can see a tail going.
Like one of the puppeteers trying to control him.
And then it goes up.
That's fantastic. Is that like in the very first one? Or one of the recent
It's in
ones?
the one with the girl and the boy. So I
The
think
little
it's-
girl, little boy. That's the first one. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll have to rewatch that. That's really funny.
Yeah. And then another thing is, if velociraptors still were alive, I mean, since they were only like
2.5 feet tall.
Yeah, I mean, all they could do is just little kids at school carrying around ninja swords, so whenever they see a velociraptor, they could do this.
It'd still be a little scary because it'd kind of be like wolves. We're still pretty certain that they hunt in packs. So it wouldn't be like you versus one velociraptor. It'd be like a whole pack of velociraptors walk up. And then you're fighting off entire packs of velociraptors with your samurai sword.
I mean, if it was like one velociraptor versus a human, the human would definitely get.
See, my big question, can you train a dinosaur? That's what I want to know. I want to know if there could be pet dinosaurs.
I mean, like it said in the movie.
Live the dream.
I mean, velociraptors, since they are like 2.5 feet tall,
Yeah,
like,
see,
they
that's
aren't actually that
I
small.
know that's smart because their brain cavity is actually pretty darn small.
And also in the movie, they're like this tall.
Oh yeah, they're at least as tall as people, if not taller than some people.
And then also in the Jurassic Park movie, the guy said if velociraptors existed, they would be a dominant species.
Yeah. The other one that was interesting was they're on like theory number 3 about what dinosaurs actually sound like, and now they're starting to think they sound like alligators. Alligators do this low rumbly noise. And there's like little clicks they can insert into the rumbles, and it's like their form of words. Like the rumble is their voice, and the clicks are their words almost. And so they're thinking that's probably what dinosaurs sound like. And so like the T-Rex, you know, that probably never actually existed. It was probably just him going around making creepy noises, almost like a leopard in the bushes. That's probably closer to like what he actually sounded like. That's the noise I make when I see the T-Rex.
Yeah. There's actually a T-Rex.
Yes, please, go for it.
See a T-Rex. Wait, is that actually a foam thing, or you pick yours out? That's what Dax won? Dax won the foam thing.
Yeah, did you want your prize then?
Money?
Sorry, I made you wait. What would you like? See the menu? So it's all this, you can have one fine with the leftover icing. Take a little chocolate covered icing and eat those.
Oh, dang it.
Yeah.
On the graduation.
Yeah.
When it comes to that, I think I'm gonna be correct.
What?
Well, good job. Who's we? What graduation are we talking about?
Like,
Just do that. Oh, the 8th graders graduation party where we specifically said it was 8th grade and 9th grade. That party. No. You were here. I wasn't gonna keep you out because I love you. But it's 8th graders and 9th graders.
Yep, the boys came. I already know.
I was very glad you came in this one particular instance because there were so few people there. It was kind of fun to have a nice ride.
Yeah, just call me next time.
Oh,
I'll
okay.
come and get that.
What's up? Oh, yeah, go for it. Go for it.
If you need another person, just call me.
We don't have free drinks. We have dollar sodas. And there's water fountain. You tell me what you want. All the things pictured right on the refrigerator.
No, one
cans
crush
are
that.
$1 and then the frappuccino's $2. One crush. Yeah, and there's only one soda. Classic.
Caffeine at 9 o'clock at night? What are your parents thinking? Oh, no.
They're thinking we left them in the care of Jacob. They'll be fine. $1, please. I can. You have to wait longer.
Four quarters makes $1, right?
No, it's 5.
I knew that. I knew math.
Yes, the word quarter means 1/4. 1/4. And so a 4. Give me a nickel as well as the 4 quarters.
Well, you're welcome. But people change.
Oh, a lot.
Tax. Oh, nice tax.
What would you like, Jacob?
I'll take a Dr. Pepper.
I just figured you would give me $1. All instead.
Helen G. One page and I will take it all.
Dude.
Helen G.
Oh, I didn't get your change.
Yeah, lock the safe up.
You can always tell that there have been teenage boys near the donut chain. They're all gone except the crumbs and the chips.
Okay. Oh, we should probably go.